This video is brought to you by Hypergame Studios for providing me an advanced copy of this game. Tune in for more information at the end of the video. And by contributions to patreon.com/Henry Kathman from viewers like you. Thank you. The cold months of winter are often characterized as a time of contemplation, when the world is sent into a frigid slumber so it may awaken with greater vitality in the spring. But for many, this time of beauty and change is also one that is defined by its melancholy. The same melancholy I imagine Tove Jansson may have felt in the winter of 1955. At 41 years old, Tove had managed to garner the kind of success she had only dreamt of in her early years as an artist. Her work is now recognized all over the world. She had managed to retain creative control in the face of large business interest, and she had done this while managing to secure a steady income for herself and her family. It was a dream scenario that was inexorably tied with the Moomins, a set of characters who were once made as a source of comfort and creativity, now a force that was leaving her artistically burnt out and creatively unfulfilled. While the Moomins daily comic strip had continued to be a beloved fixture for hundreds of newspapers, Jansson felt that she had abandoned her artistic ambitions in pursuit of financial stability. From this, a dilemma was presented. Does she continue to visit what she called the Moomin family's terribly hackneyed summer veranda, or does she pursue something new amidst this uncertain winter? Moomintroll: Winter's Warmth is the sequel to the 2024 video game Snufkin: Melody of Moominvalley. Developed and independently released by the Norwegian studio Hypergames, the game sees players taking control of Moomintroll after being largely absent from the last game. What results is an experience I've found more enjoyable than the already delightful Melody of Moominvalley, owing to the ways that Hypergame specifically set out to do something different with Winter's Warmth, though exactly what made it more enjoyable was difficult putting to words. I could describe the way that Winter's Warmth continues to capture Jansson's painterly style with a beauty and variety that might be surprising considering the primarily white color palette of both Moomintroll and Winter. Perhaps I could discuss the lovely attention to detail that I've found in how the game retains the data of where Moomintroll has already walked in the snow, causing the player to naturally walk the same paths, since it's faster than walking through fresh snow. I could also discuss the ways that the map is an improvement of Melody of Moominvalley, in the ways that it more clearly communicates vital quest and location information to the players, while still evoking the map illustrations that would precede many of Jansson's Moomin books. I could even bring up how, in spite of those map improvements, there were still some frustrations that would emerge in that late game, when it came time to collect the remaining pieces of Moomin Mama's broken vase, causing me to spend about an hour and a half scouring every section of the map to figure out how to get to this winter creature that was standing on the other side of this cave system that I couldn't find the entrance for, despite destroying all of the icicles and snow-covered bushes in that pond area, so I just had to stare in shame at this quest entry indicating that I had found only 23 out of 25 pieces that would cause Moomin Mama to undoubtedly awaken with a great sadness and shame. Overall, it's a game I would recommend to anyone who played Melody of Moominvalley, or to anyone that is already interested in the Moomins. That said, given my relationship with the series, is this an especially surprising thing to hear? The guy who on 6 separate occasions since 2021 has visited the Moomin store at the Ala Moana Center in Honolulu to take a photo of me doing this same pose, to know that guy enjoyed this game is not going to be the most shocking revelation. So, the question once again emerges of how to communicate what made Moomintroll: Winter's Warmth so enjoyable that I played through it in a single setting that lasted over 6 hours. Perhaps that answer lies in the ways this game differentiates itself from Snufkin, Melody of Moominvalley. For all the praise that I leveled at Snufkin, Melody of Moominvalley in my previous video, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little worried about how a follow-up would fare. Sure, the game had managed to effectively translate elements of Snufkin's characterization into its mechanics, and it did offer up an enjoyable anti-authoritarian story about the need for people to look to the natural world with a larger degree of care and empathy, though it's hard to disagree when reviewers like The Guardian's Lewis Packwood called it simple and unchallenging. While I think that there's more to a game's quality than its mechanical and narrative complexity, I would agree that Melody of Moominvalley didn't prioritize achieving the same contemplative tone that would be found in stories like Who Will Comfort Toffle, Moominvalley in November, or Tales from Moominvalley. So when I saw the trailer for Winter's Warmth in June 2025, I was surprised to see this game would primarily take inspiration from Tove Jansson's sixth Moomin novel, Moominland Midwinter. Published in 1957, Moominland Midwinter is often considered a turning point in both the Moomin series and Jansson's life. She had already spent a number of years writing the Moomin comics, managing its growing merchandising business, and was working to have her stories translated outside of Finland and Sweden in ways that still respected her artistic sensibilities. From removing the German editions making Moomins Christian, requesting a more cheerful cover from the 1954 Swedish editions of Comet and Moominland, all the while her publisher Soderstrom refused to share financial information about book sales and plans for future printings. It was because of all of this that Jansson exclaimed in a letter, "I want to write something new instead of tidying up." Though soon, the inspiration for Moominland Midwinter would emerge from the woman Tove had written that letter to, Tuulikki Pietilä. An artist who had crossed Tove's path several times, Tove had taken to writing her multiple times a month after Tuulikki had given her a drawing of a cat at a 1955 Christmas party. So by the time Tuulikki set up a studio on the same block as Tove's home and studio in Helsinki, their mutual respect for one another as artists and builders would blossom into a love that would bleed into the world of the Moomins, something that is visible in Winter's Warmth. The parallels between the game and the novel are most clear in the beginning, as the opening gameplay segments follow the novel almost exactly. The Moomin family follows the tradition of hibernating during the winter, when suddenly, the young Moomintroll awakens and can't fall back asleep. As players wander through the darkened interiors of Moomin House, we are treated to the uneasy tone of Jansson's writing through the ways the darkness of the winter's night distorts the familiarity of Moomin House into images of fear. It is only through the matches that act as one of our four tools that Moomintroll is able to brave the darkness to find that he had awoken before his parents early, and with no way of retreating back to the safety of his hibernation. Throughout the early hours of the game, the mechanics reflect the levels of hostility found in the cold winter, especially for someone inexperienced with that harshness like Moomintroll. Movement is made slow in fresh snow, icicle and heavy snowdrifts block paths, and Moomintroll often finds himself tumbling down any surfaces covered in ice. It's an environment that reflects Jansson's desire when writing Moominland Midwinter. I wanted to stop writing about what was deeply loved and guaranteed, to continue the same and tried to write a book about how hellish things can be. For Moomintroll and the players, hellish is a somewhat appropriate descriptor for the harm winter has for all creatures within the game, being made almost immediately clear when Moomin contends with the deadly frost brought about by the Lady of the Cold. When players almost immediately see this encounter with the Lady of the Cold from Moominland Midwinter's third chapter, Winter's Warmth creates the impression that the game is setting up some kind of final boss in the Lady of Cold, contending that in order for Moomintroll to bring spring back to the valley, he must complete a variety of quests that will culminate in an intense boss fight against the Lady of Cold. It's a direction that would have precedence in other games as well as Snufkin Melody of Moominvalley, but it's one that is almost immediately shut down by the second most important character, Tuulikki. Just as her past lovers like Atos Wirtanen and Vivica Bandler would inspire characters like Snufkin and Thingamy and Bob, Tutti, as Jansson would call her, would serve as the basis for the character of Tutikki, as well as the motivation to write this novel. Like Tulikki in real life, Tutikki is meant to act as a practical individual who combats the fears and uncertainty that surrounds them. For both Moomintroll and the players, Tutikki becomes a guiding force that makes the unfamiliar world of Moominvalley in winter less frightening and hostile. And it is here where I find Winter's Warmth becoming a much more cohesive experience compared to Melody of Moominvalley. In Hypergames' first foray into Moominvalley, players had Snufkin navigate through the story using instruments that would combat various obstacles. This serves to gamify Snufkin's quest for artistic inspiration in stories like The Spring Tune and Moomin Summer Madness, but at the risk of discussing ludonarrative dissonance on YouTube, there were times where those mechanical systems felt detached from the actual events of the story, especially when I had made Snufkin reach maximum inspiration level well before the end of the game. This was a criticism for the last game that didn't come into focus until I played Winter's Warmth, and found that Moomintroll's growth as a character was more tangibly tied with player progression in a way that mirrors Moominland Midwinter. Being a less musical character than Snufkin, the actions players can take as Moomintroll are far more defined by him learning how to manage the winter environment around him. Instead of musical instruments that somewhat arbitrarily perform different actions, Moomintroll is equipped with simple items like matches, snowballs, a shovel, and Moomin Papa's axe. Each of these items doesn't just serve functions that players of all ages are able to more easily understand, but the order they are introduced to the player's toolbox effectively corresponds with the overall themes of this game and Moominland Midwinter, the process of growing up. When Moomintroll is frightened and tries to return to hibernation, the matches light his way through the darkness. When Moomin finds himself lost in his new wintry surroundings, Tutikki gives him the mitten so he may learn how to destroy icicles and bridge gaps using snowballs. While not the most groundbreaking melding of mechanics and narrative, it was quite satisfying to navigate Moominvalley with a greater degree of confidence as time went on. Perhaps the best illustration of this was that previous example of the game remembering the path Moomin walked in the snow. In addition to being a clever method of communicating where the players have not yet traveled to, it also subtly reinforces the idea of Moomintroll adapting to the winter and becoming more independent. Once I figured out that the game wasn't going to be erasing my footprints that I left in the snow, I suddenly found myself taking the time to walk around the areas I knew that I would be frequently visiting so that I could retain the benefits of the increased speed that occurs when Moomintroll walks on an area that had already been traveled on. While I'm sure the actual increase in speed was not especially tangible as to make my journey that much more efficient, being able to use the desire paths that I had created felt like a clear signifier that Moomintroll was learning to appreciate the winter in a manner that evokes this quote from Moominland Midwinter.
Without Moomintroll knowing a thing about it, at that moment his velvet skin decided to start growing woollier. It decided to become, by and by, a coat of fur for winter use. That would take some time, but at least the decision was made, and that's always a good thing.
This demonstration of Moomintroll's development was one of Jansson's key motivators in writing Moominland Midwinter, and seeing this development serve as a basis for the mechanics of Winter's Warmth created a much more satisfying narrative experience as the game went on, and the tools like the shovel and Moomin Papa's axe were added to Moomintroll's abilities. Increasingly, players see Moomintroll comment on the ways actions like digging snow, cutting wood, and handling matches were once things he only felt safe or compelled to do with the supervision of his parents. But now, this action that would be characterized as a chore is made enjoyable through the effective gameplay loop and collecting stuff like firewood and clearing out new paths, subtly reinforcing the ways that people begin to take pleasure or enjoyment out of doing certain mundane activities as we get older. That progression towards independence is the thematic through line of Moominland Midwinter and the remaining Moomin novels that Jansson would publish going forward. No more would Moomintroll be seen as a childlike character bound to pastoral fairy tales. Both he and Jansson would begin to see the world more complexly and would strive to meet that complexity with understanding. It feels all too appropriate that the book that would emerge from this mindset would partially serve as the basis for Moomintroll Winter's Warmth, and the subject of what is somewhere between my third and sixth video discussing the Moomins online. As much as I have come to appreciate the series and the life and works of Tove Jansson over the years, it is hard not to think of that artistic stagnation Jansson feared all those years ago as I write this review. Similar to Jansson, the Moomins have also been a great source of comfort to me over the years. These stories present a vision of the world where harsh realities are not obfuscated, but are nevertheless surmounted through kindness and determination, all the while being presented in a humorous and honest manner. Though as time went on, my life has also come to parallel Jansson's, where like her, I find that my identity is further tied with these characters in ways neither of us anticipated. While it's true that my relationship with the Moomins has afforded me a number of positive experiences and opportunities like Jansson, it's also true that being known as the Moomin guy has come with certain expectations that I'm not always comfortable with. To be clear, in another similarity to Jansson, this is a position that I have pursued willingly and has been largely positive. I don't want to pretend that I know the innermost depths of Tove Jansson, but what I admire most about her life story is how she didn't let the expectations placed on her compromise how she fundamentally expressed herself in her art and her relationships. And I think that's what I also appreciate about Moomintroll Winter's Warmth the most. For a small studio composed of a little over a dozen people, it could have been quite easy for this game to act as a bog-standard rehash of Melody of Moominvalley. The fact that they decided to largely eschew Snufkin from the game, in spite of the character's massive popularity online, demonstrates that willingness to follow the authenticity displayed in Jansson's artistic philosophy. As the Moomins continue to garner popularity in new parts of the world, I sometimes share Jansson's fear that these stories and characters will be seen more and more as some shallow cottagecore branded piece of disposable escapism, that most Moomin fans will never leave the Moomin family's terribly hackneyed summer veranda. Though in playing Winter's Warmth, the people at Hypergames reminded me that, like Moomintroll, we all have the capacity to grow and emerge into our own wintry worlds with the desire to adapt and change. As 2Tiki tells Moomintroll in both the game and the novel, all things are so very uncertain. And that's exactly what makes me feel reassured. So perhaps we can all meet this uncertainty and use it as a chance to grow and change the world to one where everyone can also feel assured. Alright. Hey, if you're watching the video up to this point, first off, thank you so much for sticking around. Like, comment, and subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. Secondly, though, I would want to give an update about certain things that have been going on with me. Despite the number of released videos being smaller than the past year, I have been incredibly grateful for the positive reception and recognition that my work has received in the past year. Just to give a couple of highlights, I was asked to consult with the filmmakers behind Annapurna's upcoming Moomin film. Can't talk a little bit more because some NDA stuff. I am nearing the completion of publishing an RPG book. This has been a whole ordeal for the past, 3-ish years, so stay tuned for more info about that. And I have been continuing work on some of my most ambitious projects yet, one which I'm hoping to also have released this year. doing all this alongside my full-time job as a teacher has made me exceptionally busy, so it has made the support of people like you all the more rewarding. I've always been kind of bad at doing this kind of self-promotion thing, and I don't know, I don't like being super tacky about the whole like, comment, and subscribe thing, but it's made it a lot more gratifying that I've managed to find an audience without necessarily compromising on what I do. But as Brian David Gilbert once said, God has punished me for my hubris and my work is never done. So if you would like to make my work just a little bit easier, you could support me on my Patreon and support all of these lovely people that are showing up on the screen right now for just as little as $1 a month. There's a whole lot of stuff that I like to share on there, but dropping on the Patreon today is an exclusive interview that I did with the developers of Moomintroll Winter's Warmth. And we discussed a lot of really interesting things from the creation of this game, some of their goals in changing how they made this story compared to Snufkin Melody of Moominvalley, their relationship with the Moomins in general, and the landscape of independent game development today. It was a really cool interview, and I had a really interesting conversation with them, despite the fact that in interviewing them at 10 a.m. Norwegian time, I was working off of like 3 hours of sleep. So if you would like to listen in on this cool conversation, you can head over to patreon.com/Henry Kathman to watch this and the hours of other pieces of exclusive content that I have released over the years. But in addition to all this exclusive content, both free and paid patrons will have a chance to vote on weekly streams that I am now going to be hosting on twitch.tv/Henry Kathman, which will be starting the Saturday after this video goes up, where I will be playing through Moomintroll's Winter's Warmth and perhaps finding the remaining parts of Moomin Mama's Vase. But after that, you guys will have a chance to vote on what other kinds of games that I might play on stream. So if you would like to support me, those are two great places where you can go to. But even if you can't financially support me, just continuing to show your support by sharing and liking my stuff is more than enough. So I hope that I'll be able to share a little bit more with you guys soon. But until then, as always, thank you for watching. Best wishes.